Hi, Paul here from Spitfire Audio, and I'm very pleased to be here at the Château d'Hérouville with some guests. So I'm going to introduce you to Camden, Adrian and Tina. And first of all, I'm going to ask everyone to give us a little bit of an introduction. So Camden, if we could start with you, tell us a little bit about your journey with the piano.
It started for me when I was about 6 years old with private lessons, and at the same time with the piano, in conjunction, I did singing as well, classical singing. And it's only in the past 3 years or so which I've delved into composition and that sort of realm with the VST world. So happy to be here.
Great. Adrian.
So I'm Adrian Valia. I started also when I was young doing some classical private lessons. Then I went into the jazz world, and that's what really captured my entire life for a really long time and still does. And I started producing probably when I was about 17 years old and never looked back. I just fell in love with creating music, both acoustically and in the box.
I'm Tina. I'm predominantly a session keys player. So I tour with different artists, mainly in the pop world. I started when I was 7. I started with classical, piano and violin. Then I moved to jazz to kind of give me a foundation of harmony and chords. And then I fell in love with playing pop music.
So we're here because of this. I just wondered what your initial reaction and how it made you feel. I mean, we all know the sound of this piano so well. What did it feel like to come into this room for the first time and to actually sit at this piano and play it?
Sort of lost for words because, you know, you hear about it so many times in recordings, and to actually be here in person, it's a completely different experience. First of all, the energy in the room, as soon as you walk in, it sort of has this warm ambience to it and very inviting, and you can sort of visualize the artists who were playing on this very piano.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a very similar experience. I was kind of speechless the moment that I went in. And something I really like about these type of pianos is how they develop a particular character and tone over the years. And this one has a very clear yet very warm tone, and is very even across all the keys, which is something that is quite rare. They kept in extremely good condition. Yeah, like playing there was super inspiring, and just realizing the amount of dynamic range that you can get out of this thing is incredible.
Yeah, we got here last night and it just felt so magical. It was so surreal for all of us to be here in this environment with this amazing instrument, and to play it was a joy. It's just so easy to play and so inspiring. I think we really enjoyed the process.
I mean, you wouldn't think it's 124 odd years old. I mean, it's playability. It's
especially in the extreme ranges, right?
Yeah.
It's got such a distinctive character, but the thing that surprised me about it, and with some of my experience of some of the other pianos that I've played, it's got the kind of punch of a Yamaha C3 or something like that. But then when you play it softly, it sounds much, much more like, maybe a Steinway or a Bechstein or something like that. It's got that real delicate sound, which especially when I started playing, you guys said, push the soft pedal down, and yeah.
It's so delicate and so pretty, definitely like in the top register. I really enjoyed playing that.
Yeah.
And the VST captures that really well.
Tell me about the comparison between the two. I mean, what do you notice about the comparing, now that you've played the actual thing and you've played the VST?
I mean, the first thing is that obviously there has been a lot of work in sampling and recording everything properly, and the voicing of the piano. So the amount of colors that you get with the VST is, a lot more than you might initially think that you have. And so you have to find those little spots where, as you said, you have the soft pedal on, and then you can find that intimate grand studio piano preset, and actually you're right in that space. Or you go for the more like upfront, kind of like forward sounds, and then you envision how when you play harder on that upper register, that really cuts through. What I really enjoyed about the VST is how the simple parameters were musical throughout the entire range. So things like the filter didn't feel like it had like random artifacts or anything like that. It really felt like, this is a brighter piano going into something softer, and that's exactly all I need.
I just really enjoyed playing it. It was kind of magical being able to compare playing the Steinway. And then I'm just excited to go home and play with the VST, because I'm like bringing it home with me, which is so cool.
A piece of history.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're recording a project and you thought, right, I've got the resources, you've got a a label or whatever who are going to pay for you to go to a residential studio. That's amazing, but we don't have that very often, do we?
Absolutely.
So the way of capturing this and to enable you to take it away and take it home and use it, it's an interesting thing because it's kind of the restorer Bastien said when he started working on it, he said this piano still has something to say, which is a really kind of poetic way of putting it, I think. And it's I think that now that you can take it and you can transport this sound, obviously it would be great to record here, but you can take this sound and you can use it in your own productions. It's a nice, it's kind of romantic, isn't it, in a way?
Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of reminds me of going to that photo album that is in the living room on our building, and those moments would be completely gone. Nobody would be able to experience them, and we're able to just see glimpses of it. And you can do the same thing with a VST, like the amount of history that could have been lost in the amount of songs that would have been lost if, you know, that wasn't accessible to more people. So now the legend is going to live on.
So you've all chosen a song that was recorded here, so maybe an Elton song or a Bee Gees song. You'd obviously have prepared that on your own instrument at home. How did it feel like coming here and then performing that song on this piano, and also compared to performing it on the VST downstairs?
The sound of the room, I think, is what, you know, caught my attention at first, and the ability to have that dynamic range that I was talking about earlier. All of those things kind of like transported me to that moment, even though I wasn't there. I felt like I was in a time machine for a brief period of time. It's great to have VSTs that can resemble all of these aspects, but you can't lie that like being in the real room, you know, it has something to it.
It was really surreal having listened to I Chose Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Having listened to that for the past week non-stop and like playing along at home on all my different keyboards, and then coming here and playing it, there was just like something so special, and I just felt like Elton in the moment. I was just like, oh my God, this is crazy and so beautiful, and it sounded exactly like the record.
It's so recognisable, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And it's so rare to be able to come to a place and play the same instrument in the same room. Camden, what about you?
I mean, the space is definitely, the ambience and acoustics is very different to playing at home. I mean, and especially the Steinway and the weight of the keys, it's different to my home semi-weighted piano. So it was quite a step up, I'd say, in terms of playability and sound, and that was then reflected in the VST, because I think that's very important, because the VST, it needs people to know that it's versatile, not just, you know, Elton John or Bee Gees. It's for classical lovers as well. So yeah, it was an honor playing my composition on the Château Piano.
It's an honor for us to have you here. It's really great. Yeah, I think one of the first patches that we worked on was the one that's just called Natural. We were very careful to make sure that, okay, this sounds good when you play Chopin, Debussy, Bach. You know, we didn't want it to be a kind of rock and roll piano. It's really interesting how versatile it is, because there's actually we don't hear that many recordings, you know, from the 70s with this on, where it's played in that kind of style. But absolutely, when you play it, contemporary classical piece on it, it's perfect for that as well.
I mean, perfect. I mean, look how many presets alone you have in the library.
Yeah.
And there are infinite iterations as well you can do within those presets.
I felt tempted to reharmonize, and I really rearrange the Elton John that I had chosen. But I'm happy that I decided to go for a more conservative approach because I could really feel that energy then. But then I did some improvisation, and I was really surprised to hear how if you play something very legato and big, you can really hear all the chords ring out in the room. But then if you're playing more rhythmically and playing with a swing, actually both the instrument and the room respond to that very well. So it doesn't get lost or smeared.
The idea of, you know, certain spaces, people set studios up in them, and then you just never know whether it's going to sound any good or not. So it's like sometimes they sound terrible, and there are some really big studios that sound terrible, but they make the best of them. But some spaces just have a magical sound, and you know, it's so funny because you just look around and you go, well, I don't really know why,
it shouldn't work, but it does.
But it does. Yeah, it sounds great. Something magical happens. So you've all stayed here, and we all know that Brian Eno was woken every morning by someone shaking his shoulder.
What?
There was. Oh, sorry, didn't you know? So the chateau is haunted apparently, but I wonder whether did anyone have any supernatural experiences?
We tried.
We tried.
Yeah, but
You guys
we
tried.
tried probing a little.
Yeah.
But
We went on a bit of an excursion
Yeah.
after everyone went to sleep, trying to go through some of the rooms that still had no electricity on and like was still being renovated. We found a basement where they had lots of the, like the tennis table and a bunch of like
Tape
vinyls and tape machines and chairs.
Yeah.
So, but we didn't see anything.
any ghosts.
Yep.
too shy. Who knows?
There's part of the building, I don't know whether you went in it, but there's a part of the building on the other side from the other wing. And that's where the master bedroom was that apparently David Bowie walked in there and took one look at it and said, I'm not sleeping in there. And there was some dark, mysterious energy in there in the corner of the room that
That was
freaked him out.
cold.
Yes. Yeah. And so he was like, no. So they had to get him somewhere else to sleep.
There's so many little corners. Like I quite enjoy going outside as well and seeing the surroundings.
So digital creativity is obviously incredibly important. In this day and age, we have all kinds of tools that we use to create music. So what do you find the most important about VSTs that you use and any of the digital tools that you use to write music?
When I was looking at the Chateau presets, I loved all like the variety that you had because it kind of sparks inspiration straight away. So from the natural pianos to the more affected ones, I was like, oh, wow. Because it captures the character of the Chateau Piano and this beautiful Steinway, but also adds some modern elements. So it like sparks ideas instantly and I could just sit and play it all day.
I guess for me, VSTs in general, the great advantage is being able to take it anywhere with you. This thing is a bit harder to do that, especially on,
In the rucksack.
Yeah, by the beach. Yeah, not able to do that. The fact that you can edit it easily, so that is a huge bonus. And then, of course, as I said, getting the amount of range of sounds that you do with a VST is quite impractical to do in a single recorded session even. So the fact that you're able to do all of this, edit them, and take them with you no matter where you are, it's, I think, the biggest selling point.
We all want to write music and be creative, but, most people don't have the means to do so. So making these VSTs available is bringing music to more communities, which is the whole point of it.
Yeah, to add to that, I learned on a Steinway at music school every Saturday. And my teacher would be like, why doesn't your parents get you a Steinway or an upright? I was like, my parents aren't the richest in the world and they're doing what they can. But it's amazing to have a VST that can emulate that and have that same feel and that same tone and still be as inspiring as playing the real thing.
It's so important with creativity to remove frictions, and not have things in the way. And it's true that like, if you are dependent on the studio and like going there, making sure it's open, calling the people involved,
making sure it's tuned,
making sure it's tuned, having someone record it, and if you're filming yourself, making sure that the computer is not in the shot, all of those things get in the way. So being able to do this anytime is also, when inspiration strikes, it's very important to keep that momentum. So I think VSTs have a place there.
And the thing for us is just to, since the very, very beginning of Spitfire, which was a kind of accident, in 2007, the thing that always annoyed me about virtual instruments back then, sample libraries, was just they didn't sound very good and they weren't very playable. And so the one thing that we've always really heavily focused on is to record things authentically and with a kind of without any kind of limitation on the signal path and things like that. So record best mics and the best signal path possible. But also then, the team has this kind of job of trying to make it really, really playable. And that's really interesting with something like a piano, because you've got a direct comparison. You can kind of literally turn from one to the other. It's not as simple as people think, okay, well, you could just get a disclavier and you can just record it doing, MIDI 7, then MIDI 10, then 15. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem to work for me. I think that there's a thing that goes on in our heads as pianists, and you all know this because you're much better than I am, but there's something where a mezzo forte or whatever is not the same. You don't hit the key as hard in one place as you do in another place. It kind of projects a different power in different areas. And so I feel like, as painful as it is, the process of a human being sitting at the piano and playing the notes, the samples, and then we obviously have to, it's a huge process to make sure that we've got every dynamic correct. But when you then put it together at the end, it does sound more musical. I don't really know why. Apart from the kind of the idea going on in your head of how loud should this be when I press it at, middle dynamic or whatever, there shouldn't be any real difference. I'm interested to know from you all, actually, as pianists, do you think that one pianist touch and another pianist touch on the same piano, hitting the key at the same velocity, is that different? And if so, why is it different? How do we feel the difference?
What I'd be more curious to know, now that you mentioned this, is have you ever run some blind tests, like one versus the other?
Yeah.
So you can because since
blind,
you know.
Yeah. That's a great idea, yeah.
I think it's very important to dial in the velocity curves correctly, but also the way it's been done is absolutely super important. I think we probably all played at some point at a library where the moment you hit it just a bit hard, it just is super bright and pokes out too much.
Yeah.
And that lack of, and especially back then, the sample libraries weren't nearly as good. That's one thing that I really enjoy about Spitfire plugins in general, is how all the parameters are very musical, no matter how much you dry them. And that goes for the playability, for the settings, for the mics. It's kind of hard to make them sound bad. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. And to your question, I think we all play very different genres, I guess. And if we were playing the same note, like mezzo forte, I think it would sound different because our touch is different and how we approach playing, maybe.
I'm not sure if we would be able to hear the one note, but definitely with a single, yes.
So it's a relative thing. It's about this sequence of, right, okay. Interesting. We're all going home with Château Piano, not with this one, unfortunately, but we have one that we can play at home. So are there any favourite presets or anything that's inspired you to write?
I quite like the Boatman, actually. It has a sort of lovely, warm, mellow, woody sound. And I quite like that music, especially in the contemporary classical sphere. At first, I chose the Natural Grand, which is the first preset, but the Boatman, I'd say that's in the locker. So
great,
inspiring some new ideas.
I mean, for me, my two favorite ones were, I think it's the second preset, which is up front. Could be incorrect, but I think that's the one. It's got a really nice, bright, attacking sound. And then you got the intimate Grand Studio, which I just need to dial the reverb slightly back, and then it's absolutely perfect. It's one of my favorites for more ballads.
I loved Yellow because it obviously has inspiration from Mr. John.
Yeah.
And I think it's just perfect for pop music, and that's what I love playing. I also loved Space Ballad.
Oh yeah,
it was really
that's a good one.
cool.
Yeah.
I had to adjust the reverb a little bit.
Yeah.
But there's just something so magical and atmospheric about it.
And we're talking about how in some libraries you might be able to play them on solo piano, but there's some others but in those same libraries you wouldn't be able to fit them in the mix anywhere.
Absolutely.
And I found that this wasn't the case. Definitely, it was a very rich tone, but it just blended well.
Absolutely. No frequencies were popping out too much because other VSTs, they're quite hard to mix in production, especially with lots of other instruments going on.
It's a very interesting paradox. I mean, kudos to Spitfire, because I don't know how you do it with making warm, mellow timbres, but also soaring highs without piercing, the eardrums.
A lot of it is just it's at the source, and it's where you place the microphones, which microphones you pick. And obviously we had some great, people were doing it here 50 years ago really beautifully, so we could follow their path. But there is a lot of it is the signal path. And I think sometimes you think maybe it adds a couple of % each individual thing that, maybe going through this preamp. And even the things like how much signal you're putting through the preamp changes the timbre of the sound really quite dramatically. But you won't necessarily notice all that. You might notice it when you're doing a piano performance, just in one thing. But when you do this on every individual recording, and then you've got tens of thousands of individual samples, and then they all combine, somehow it seems to magnify those small changes, and it really adds up to something, something great. Thank you for being here. It's been really great.
Thank you for having us. It's been a
Thank you
pleasure.
for being here.